This is The Pastor's Heart, and Dominic Steele here, and my guests are Tim Clemens and Stuart Starr. We are talking today the membership process, designing and running a membership course. How do we help onboard Christians who join our churches from another church? They could be from a different church within our denomination, or they could be joining us from a church from a different denomination. We're not talking about the whole flow of helping people join you, but just how you go about defining who you are, what you stand for, and them actually joining you. Stuart Starr, he's the senior pastor of New Life Church at Oran Park in Sydney's southwest, and Tim Clemens leads the ministry team at Grace City Church at Green Square in the inner city of Sydney. Tim, let's start with you and the pastor's heart, and what's God been doing on your heart?
Thanks, Dominic. Good to be here. Last little while, honestly, has been a little bit difficult for our church. We lost a 4-day-old baby. That was the baby of one of our staff team. And so, as you can imagine, that was pretty devastating for everyone involved. It also happened the funeral was on Easter Saturday. And so it was kind of obviously a very, very sad moment, but also to have it so close to Easter was also really encouraging to be reminded of the hope that we have of the resurrection. So doing okay, but going through a hard season in some ways.
I guess lots of people, you've got a relatively young group, and lots of people kind of imagining themselves into the parents' situation and grieving. You, Stuart?
I had a significantly different Easter to that. We had a real joyous celebration at Easter, and I've just come off the back of holidays where I've reconnected with family and taken a break. So I've got energy getting back into a new term, and I'm sure that, as we were discussing before, there are pastoral issues awaiting me, Dominic, but at the moment they're beneath the waters.
You don't know what they are.
And I'm on Tuesday of the term back, so doing okay, thank you.
Well, thanks for coming to talk to us on your first day back from holidays. Hey, why do we need a membership course?
I think we need to create a moment for people where they can say, I'm here. From this is your church to this is my church. And at New Life, we say to people, you're free to be our guest until you choose to be our partner. And so choosing to be our partner, we say partnership, so that's a difference. And we can discuss that maybe at another point. But we say partnership when you put your hand up and say, I want to contribute here rather than I just want to be present. And so for us, it's a moment where people are stepping towards engagement, and we want to create a time where we inform people, but also celebrate that moment when they step into serving and the life of our church.
Tim, my son's just joined your church. He went along to your members course and he said, I've got a quote here, it's pretty full on, it's clear, they have clear expectations, they know where they're going, and they want you to come. I think I agree, I think I like it. What are you doing in this membership course?
Good on him. He hasn't passed that on to me, so I'm pleased he said that. That's good to see. What's the question? What are we doing?
Yeah, what is this membership course that is clear, with clear expectations and
the rest?
Pretty full on, you said.
Okay. So it goes for 2 hours on a Sunday afternoon after our 2 morning services at 1 o'clock. So that's when it is and when it runs. It runs once a month. What do we cover? We cover mostly 4 things in that 2 hours. First, vision. So here's a little bit of my story, here's the story of the church, and here's where we're going under God. 2, really tapping into discipleship. And what is discipleship? What does it look like to live as a follower of Jesus? And with a few kind of little bits in there as here's what that might look like specifically contextually at our church. Third, we kind of talk through next steps for people. So most people coming through that are coming because they want to call Grace City, or they at least want to think through, do I want to call this church my home church? And how do I get plugged in? So we say next 3 steps for you would likely be joining into one of our midweek groups, joining a ministry team, and partnering with us financially. So we kind of talk through each of those. And then finally, the 4th thing is there's a bit of a join decision where we invite people to actually become members, and we outline what exactly the expectations are if you do decide to join us, on you, and then we let people decide.
2 hours, it's not long enough, you think, Stuart?
No, we're having this discussion just before we went on air, Dominic. So we do it over 3 weeks. And what that looks like, the first week people come and have lunch at my house. So I think there's kind of two things going on for us. We have a thing called New and Newish, which is the part that everybody who's new in our church could go to. Partnership is a separate thing from that. So it isn't the gate that everybody goes through, it's a separate thing. So if you choose to be a partner with us, come and have lunch at my house, and then we run 2 hours after that on the first week. The second week, 2 hours. The third week, 2 hours. First week we do vision and values, so who we are and what we stand for.
So
similar.
It's kind of like the second blessing.
Some people may say that.
Level up to become
yeah,
a
that's right. Really important that I say this.
I'm just messing.
No. I want to say this really clearly. So it isn't about disadvantaging anyone in our church. And so partnership isn't required for coming to church. It isn't required for our life groups or anything like that. However, it is required for serving in the life of our church. And we have no expectations on those who are guests, those who regularly come to our church but haven't chosen to be partners. We say come along and enjoy being part of our family. But if you choose to be a partner, we have a whole bunch of expectations. So you should know our vision and values. Second week, we talk about what we expect of you as a partner. And the third week is we talk about how we do mission together as a church. And so really, part of the reason that we go for 3 weeks rather than 2 hours is I'm saying, I want to know you. I want to know you. I want to have eaten together. So we have those 3 weeks, and then I come and visit you in your home. And then I hear your personal testimony in your place. And after all of that has gone through, we'll invite you to be a partner at New Life. So for me, it's a really intimate, personal thing where we're saying, when I look at my partners in the church, they're the people I know for sure are on board with us. And I know them. I've been in their home. I've heard their personal story. And so as the church gets bigger and bigger, I just cherish this thing, which is my knowledge of all the people who serve in the life of our church is really personal and intimate. And so, it's a beautiful thing. And so we run it every term, not every month. And so once a term, we say to people, if you've been coming for a while and you figure you'd love to serve in the life of our church with your time and your talents and your treasure, this is the pathway to do that.
Now, you're both ministering in very different contexts.
We are, very different contexts.
You're in a context where people are buying their first home.
Second home, probably.
Second home, but they're making their 25-year life decision.
Yeah.
Tim and I are in a much more similar context.
More dynamic.
Well, we were looking at the survey yesterday, and in our suburb, 60% of the suburb have moved house in the last 5 years. You know, the churn. This is not the we actually think the church is more stable than the suburb.
Yeah, sure.
But the churn in the suburb is massive, and that's a massive time commitment. Is that what you're thinking, Tim?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Push back on him. Why wouldn't it work for you?
I don't know that I would push back as much to appreciate there are benefits and weaknesses, or strengths and weaknesses of the long versus short. The long course will more likely be more transformative. The shorter course will be informative. That both are okay. You just got to figure out which is right for our context. Like you, we've recognised, there's actually a fair amount of churn, a lot in the suburb, but also in our church. Some people will, join us for 6 months to 2 years. A lot stay for longer than that, but there is this kind of 2-year, 3-year cycle of people coming and joining. And so we used to run a 2-week course. At that time, we were wondering, should we make it longer? Should we make it shorter? If we made it longer, that's good, but then you've got the question of, do we require people to come and join us? Or what about the people who missed it? If they only could make week 1, do we actually care about week 2? Or if we don't, then why do we have 2 weeks? And so there was that practical
And did you
question.
find we found a lot of people would come week 1 and then a big dropout on week 2, but they'd still expect to be allowed into a small group.
Yeah. There was that.
Do you have that problem?
No, we don't. So because I'm not expecting everyone to do it. Our on board is done through New and Newish, and so everybody gets to do that, and that happens regularly.
So you get into a small group.
Yeah, absolutely, you can.
Done the New and Newish.
Totally, absolutely.
Yeah.
But you can't serve in the life of our church without having done our partnership course. And so in that sense, we're saying to people, we have a big expectation. We have a high bar, and we're inviting you to step into it. If you choose not to, be our guest for as long as you'd like. There's absolutely no problems. We love you. You're part of our church.
What happens when I desperately need a kids' church leader?
No. One of my commitments is I will never speak desperately from the front for help.
No.
I will turn to our partners who have said we're going to sacrificially support the ministry, and that's how. And I have total confidence. So you will never hear a request for a ministry gap from the front. in our church ever. Because these guys have got my back and they've said, I'm in to help you. And so what it does, it gives me this tremendous confidence that there's a group of people in our church who are, they've stepped towards us. I haven't cried out for them. I haven't said, we need you desperately. I've just said, you're free to be here for as long as you'd like. But when you choose to step in, we expect a lot from you. And they are awesome and sacrificial and generous. And they are the engine room and the heart of our church. I'm so thankful for them.
Somebody who comes along, how long would it be before they did that partnership
Well, some people will sit there and
on average.
Sure, a long time for some people, and so they might say, "I'm not ready to do that. I just need to figure it out." And we say to people, if someone's just transferred from another place into our church, we say to them, "Why don't you just take a breather? Why don't you just sit here and get the sense of what's happening at New Life for 6 months or for a year? Just
for a year,
chill out, right?"
Yeah, I mean,
because
they're halfway through their time with Tim.
Well, I guess maybe that's a different expectation. But the other thing I want to say to them, we want you to commit when you've got space and energy and you want to serve. I want to take that positive step towards energy. And so, for some people it'll be 6 months. Some people it'll be the next week they go, oh, this term's one's running, I want to serve in the life of this new church, we're in. And so I've had that happen numerous times. But for most people, maybe it's a year. And I've got some holdouts who just haven't done it at all. And that's okay by me.
What do you do in your newish thing?
Yeah, sure. So we tell them what our church is about, how to get involved. That's one afternoon. Yeah. It's 2 hours. They have afternoon tea. I don't even run it.
Yeah.
And the idea is that people meet other people, they eat with them, they hear about the church, they're invited into life groups, and we say to them, at some point in the future, when you're ready, partnership is your next step.
Mm-hmm. How often does that run?
On a term basis.
Okay.
Once a term only.
Any biblical input at that? Like here's expectations, here's
no.
faith,
So
here's holiness.
It's not designed. The vehicle isn't designed to carry the theological weight there. It's really a welcome. Here's what's up and down. Ask your questions.
Yeah.
How are we weird and strange?
Sure.
So you're doing cultural issues, but not theological issues.
Yeah, although I'm hearing you guys pressure me on that, and maybe I need to lift the game on that. But no, serious. So that it's more orientation, welcoming, plug you into the structure of life groups and that sort of thing, so that you can find community and understand what's going on with us. Mm-hmm. But so we don't let anyone serve doing anything unless they're a partner, which is our very unusual step.
Yeah. I guess one of the reasons that we have on board as our membership course, and we have it right up early, but I'm seeing some significant benefits of your approach, is we also want to encourage people to have a join moment. So
yes.
Everyone who's coming to our church will have their own idea. Some of them may be biblical, some of them may not be,
totally.
Of what it means to join this church. Maybe they think joining this church means this is the place I come to get my spiritual goods and services. I have a consumer relationship with this church. Maybe they come and think this is the place I want to serve, that I want to go deep with community. Maybe it's this is the place I want to meet other people because I'm looking for a spouse. People will have different ideas. What our onboard course gives us the opportunity to do is to define for people from the Bible what joining a local body of believers actually means.
Yep.
And the certain expectations that the Bible has on us as church members, church leaders. And so that's a really helpful way for us to define what otherwise people will bring their own definitions of.
Yeah, I think that's really, really helpful. And certainly we do that in spades as part of the partnership course. And comfortable to hear your encouragement that it might be earlier, that we could do some of that stuff as well.
I guess people think they're part of your church. They may or may not, again, maybe they're Christians, maybe they're not.
No, sure. I guess I'm happy for them to float around a bit and get to know them in relationship. And that's the other part of not doing... So our unique thing is serving it requires partnership. And so you won't be on kids, you won't be on any of these other things unless you're a partner with us. And that does require this theological grid where we get grace and we understand that we're reformed and all of those sorts of things. So we do all of that hard work with the people who are going to be doing all the ministry that you experience. But for other people, we want to say, welcome and find your place in our community relationally, and we'll draw you either into Jesus for the Curious or into partnership at some point in the future. So,
Now, let's go back to your model, Tim, and theologically onboarding people, because you're getting people who are coming to you from Anglican backgrounds, from...
Not many, but yes.
Right, well, all sorts of different backgrounds,
Yeah.
and you try to define some things theologically. And my son told me about a helpful diagram. Can you walk us through that?
Yeah.
We'll put it up on the screen in a sec.
Okay. Yeah, great.
So he's got his booklet.
I'll just get my booklet out and see what the diagram is.
If you're listening to the audio here, you maybe head over to thepastorsheart.net and find the picture that we're talking about.
So pretty early on at On Board, we talk about where our church sits on what we call the theological landscape. And the reason we do that is I say, a bunch of you might be here and you know what our church believes, you've got a pretty good sense of it. Others of you On Board feels like a speed date where you're trying to figure out what do we believe.
Yes.
And maybe you think we're trying to speed date you, what do you believe? And so what I try and do is use a series of concentric circles, which you'll see in a second, and a series of labels that kind of communicate who we are, what we believe, just using labels. Now, labels are imperfect, but they're helpful because they kind of collect bodies of thought. And I also contrast them with their opposite. Mm-hmm. And I put them in a concentric circle to show people from inside out what's most important for us. So do you want me to go through it?
Yeah.
So from the inside...
We're just new members checking things out.
Exactly. I'm speed dating
from
at
the
moment.
inside out, we're Christians, not a cult. Now, Christians means that we hold to the confessions of the church developed in the first 5 centuries, which affirm the divinity of Jesus and the resurrection, things like that. We're Protestants, not Catholics. That means we trace our roots back to the Protestant Reformation in the 1500s. We hold to the 5 solas of the Reformation. I talked briefly through those. We're evangelicals, not liberals. Now, different people mean something slightly different by evangelical. The way I'm using it is that we mean that we hold to the scriptures alone as inspired, without error, authoritative, and that they alone are the authority for what we believe rather than human reason or church tradition, for example. Mm-hmm. We're Reformed rather than Arminian. I always have to explain that doesn't mean we've got anything against the country of Armenia or the people from there. It's a theological. It's a theological position. I could easily say that we're Calvinists. I joke that's because because Jesus was a Calvinist. Ha ha ha. Some people laugh. Some people are like, he's weird. And then finally, I say we're Anglican, not something else, which really means that from our governance structures, parish council, senior minister, I explain briefly what that means. Mm-hmm. Then I do go on to say, now, in terms of all these labels, which of these do you need to hold to in order to be a member? I say, technically, all you need is to hold that middle label. That is, you need to be a Christian to be a member of our church. Maybe you've come from a different background. Maybe you're brand new as a Christian at our church. You don't know what these labels are. That's fine. All you need to do is be a Christian. I then go on to say, however, if you've been a Christian for a while and you're pretty settled on your labels, you're going to find it hard to be a member with us if you don't at least hold the first 3: evangelical, Protestant, Christian. I then go on to say you don't have to be reformed in your theology. We have a number of people who are not, and that's okay as long as they're aware that we are and are willing not to be divisive, sit under our teaching, that's fine. And then I say you don't have to be an Anglican. Most of our church were not part of an Anglican church in the past. Mm-hmm. That's the way I use the diagram.
That's really good. We do evangelical, Anglican, contemporary, and I hold up my Bible, a prayer book and an iPhone, and I say that's our church. Similar thing. Here's the thing though that kind of I think is the value. People have it made explicit at the front. Mm-hmm. And I think this is, apart from anything else, if people take away nothing else from what we're talking about, we give people an opportunity through whatever form of course we do to say, here's what we're here for, here's what we believe, and here's what we expect. Mm-hmm. And I think having that gateway moment where you say to people, I'm going to tell you, you don't have to discover. Don't wander around our church unsure of whether we're reformed or whatever. We're going to lay out what we are and invite you, which I think is what you're doing, invite you in to who we are. But also, don't be surprised if I'm not Catholic, because I told you that at the start. And so I actually think there's a profound helpfulness in being explicit on some of the things that might be implicit in a whole bunch of other places. So I think that's the advantage.
Pentecostal, you didn't engage with that word.
Because we're not Pentecostal?
No, I mean, I'm just imagining there are some people who are coming from a Pentecostal background and they're looking at your concentric circles and thinking, well, where am I in that?
Yeah, Pentecostal so Pentecostal's not strictly speaking a denomination. So what's the alternative to Pentecostal? The closest you can go.
You could put it in the Arminian category potentially.
You can go. It's the alternative to an evangelical, though many Pentecostals would describe themselves as evangelical. So it's just.
Do people ask? I guess I'm just thinking. I'm imagining that
what we end up getting,
people would ask you questions about that.
We do.
Yeah.
So I choose not to go we're not Pentecostal XYZ. A lot of our people come from previously Pentecostal churches. What we always get, almost without fail, is questions on the Holy Spirit.
Right.
Now, in the first year of our church, 2016, I preached 4 hours on our weekend away on the Holy Spirit. And so part of that was because we had a bunch of Pentecostals coming to our church and I knew I needed to be on top of it theologically.
Yep.
Part of it was also so that we've got a resource
that you
I can always say, here's what we believe about the Holy Spirit, but if you want 4 hours of it, go listen to the talks on the website. So that's how we deal with it there.
Right. So you kind of don't tackle it head on. You say, go and listen to this, and then...
I will ask any question, I will answer any question that they ask, but I won't go head on to... Here's the difference between a Pentecostal church and a non-Pentecostal church. I won't flag that all the way up front.
Yeah. And
they know we're not Pentecostal, though.
Because of the experience.
Well, the experience, the fact that I say we're Anglican, etc., etc.
Gotcha. Yeah. The word partner.
Yeah. We wrestled with that a lot.
Yeah, because it does... I mean... When I first heard, I mean, obviously it's a Philippians word as opposed to, but the word partner, member, the Corinthians word.
Yep.
Yeah.
So members of the body is fine. I think the immediate thing, I'm old now, but membership has its privileges is the word that used to, that was the connection, I think it's American Express. Membership has its privileges. I think we say partners have their responsibilities, and it's a Bible word. I can take you to the passage and say from Philippians, we always give thanks for you for your partnership in the gospel. And so what I'm inviting people to is to join us, put their shoulder to the wheel of the work that we're doing at New Life on the back of a passage like Philippians. And I don't want to say that members, it's an exclusive inner core of people who, get to the cushy lounge and have the best car parks in that's not what we're trying to send. We're trying to send it's a dirty boots and...
Your church has a car park? Tim and I are looking at you and thinking, what?
Brothers, we have different blessings, do we not? I'm very thankful for our car park. But yeah, so it was chosen to say partnership has its responsibilities rather than membership has its privileges. So it was really trying to work on that. And because I love standing up every time. So this is what happens, Dominic. Our church is organised around a tree. It's a physical thing. And if you become a partner with us at New Life, we hand you a tree.
You get one of these?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Now,
and in fact,
cool.
We've just levelled them up, which is really cool. So everything in our church is organised around that, and I could run you through it, and there's the whole thing that sits behind that. But that's the symbol for New Life. And what we do is we get people up the front.
Sorry, the members get this, or just the members get one of these?
That's right, the partners,
because
that's our numbers.
They don't have members.
Yeah. So, but you come up
so
the front.
You go into somebody's house and they've got no tree on the mantelpiece.
Okay, so that's true. But here's the flip side. I love going into the houses of our partners because all of them have it on the front of their door. They have, right as you come into their house, people will put their tree on display and they proudly put it there and they say, that's me. And so when people ask me, what's that tree? They say it's the symbol of New Life, and they can talk through every branch on this tree and we'll explain that we give and live the message of New Life and how we go about that process. It's all connected to this tree. Now, what that creates for us though is
we'll get the
on
page
board.
That explains it.
Yeah, sure.
Link it to this thing.
But so it creates that moment where people stand up the front of church with us. I give thanks for them personally. They receive their tree and they have a moment where they're saying, I'm all in. And I love that moment, and they love that moment. And to give the testimony of we've been coming to this church for this long, we can't wait to be doing this at church. And that's the advertising we do for partnership is give the trees, and then the next course is coming up.
How does it? I mean, you've both, if you like, with partnership, you've overlaid it on top of the Anglican structure. and doesn't sit completely comfortably, and your one doesn't sit completely comfortably on the Anglican. How do you kind of wrestle with that? Yeah.
Yeah, so now I must confess, the start of this year, Grace City became a recognised Anglican church.
Congratulations.
So, thank you. So you're welcome to correct my misunderstanding here. But at least as I understand it, so membership in the Anglican, you're a member of an Anglican
just
church.
To clarify for people, for those watching, Tim, Stuart and I are all Anglican ministers in the Diocese of Sydney, and so we're having a little internal thing about what are you doing here?
Sure.
I mean, here you go.
So I think you're technically considered a member of an Anglican church if you're, call yourself a Christian, you've been baptised, and you've regularly attended services for 3 months in the last 12 months, in the last year. So it's something like
loosey-goosey low
pretty
bar.
loosey-goosey. Now, why does that matter? And again, here's where you can correct me. It seems to me that largely matters so that you know who's allowed to vote in your AGM.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's like once a year. And aside from that, doesn't really seem to make much of a difference. Whereas the way that we talk about it, we're talking about the flesh on the bones, week to week. What does it mean to live as a disciple, particularly in the context of Grace City as this community of believers walking together? And so the language of membership there is slightly more helpful. Now, as I said, probably 30 to 40% of our people at most have previously come from an Anglican church. So no one thinks that the language of membership at our church is controversial in an Anglican system, either because they don't know it or they don't really care. The membership thing is about the AGM. That's like once a year, and I'll forget it until next year.
They probably don't go anyway.
We had our AGM this year. We had a handful of people there. I was okay with that. Because I think the real business, the exciting stuff happens not necessarily at the AGM.
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming in, gentlemen. That's been super helpful and given us lots to think about. My guests on the Pastor's Heart, Tim Clemens, and Tim is Senior Minister of Grace City Church in Waterloo, and Stuart Starr, bringing new life to the people of Oran Park. Thanks for joining us, and we'll look forward to your company next Tuesday afternoon.